In the electric atmosphere of a late-night television studio, the stage was set for what promised to be a routine yet compelling interview on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The guest was Pete Hegseth, a polarizing figure known for his military background, his tenure as a Fox News commentator, and his outspoken conservative views. The audience, buzzing with anticipation, expected a lively exchange given Hegseth's reputation for unapologetic rhetoric and Colbert's knack for sharp-witted, incisive questioning. As the lights dimmed and the iconic theme music played, Stephen Colbert strode onto the stage with his trademark grin, welcoming the audience both in the studio and at home. He introduced Hegseth with a nod to his military service and media career, setting a tone that was cordial yet tinged with the promise of probing questions. Hegseth, dressed in a crisp suit, walked out to polite applause, his demeanor confident but guarded, as if he knew the conversation could take a contentious turn. The initial exchange was light, with Colbert tossing out a few softball questions about Hegseth's recent book and his thoughts on the evolving political landscape. However, the atmosphere shifted when Colbert pivoted to more sensitive topics, particularly Hegseth's controversial statements on national security and his defense of certain political figures. The host's tone remained playful, but his questions grew sharper, each one designed to peel back layers of Hegseth's public persona. The audience sensed the rising tension, their murmurs growing as Colbert pressed Hegseth on a recent scandal involving leaked communications, a topic that had dominated headlines. Hegseth's responses were measured at first, deflecting with practiced talking points about media bias and the challenges of public service. But as Colbert leaned in, his questions becoming more pointed, Hegseth's composure began to fray. The host referenced specific allegations, citing reports that painted Hegseth in an unflattering light, and the room grew quieter, the air thick with anticipation. Hegseth countered with fervor, accusing Colbert of pushing a narrative and dismissing the allegations as politically motivated. His voice rose, his gestures becoming more animated, as he leaned forward in his chair, clearly rattled but determined to hold his ground. The exchange was a verbal sparring match, with Colbert's quick wit meeting Hegseth's fiery indignation, and the audience was riveted, unsure whether to cheer or brace for what came next. As the segment progressed, the clash intensified, with neither man willing to cede ground. Colbert, ever the master of his stage, maintained a veneer of calm, but his questions cut deeper, challenging Hegseth's credibility and forcing him to confront contradictions in his public statements. Hegseth, visibly frustrated, began to interrupt, his tone growing defensive as he accused the host of ambushing him with gotcha questions. The audience gasped at moments, their reactions fueling the drama. As the interview veered into uncharted territory, it was clear that this was no ordinary late-night chat. It was a collision of ideologies, personalities, and agendas, playing out live for millions to see. The tension reached a boiling point when Colbert, with a sly smile, asked Hegseth to clarify a particularly inflammatory comment he'd made on social media. Hegseth's face reddened, his jaw tightening, as he launched into a passionate defense, claiming his words were taken out of context by a hostile media. The back and forth grew heated, with both men talking over each other, their voices rising in a crescendo that threatened to derail the segment entirely. The audience, now fully invested, alternated between laughter and stunned silence, sensing that something unprecedented was unfolding. This was no longer just an interview, it was a spectacle, a moment of raw, unfiltered television that would be dissected and debated for days to come. The stage was set for a dramatic turn, and no one, not even the seasoned crew, could predict what would happen next. As the interview barreled forward, the atmosphere in the studio grew increasingly charged, the energy crackling like a live wire. Stephen Colbert, perched behind his desk, leaned forward, his eyes glinting with the kind of intensity that only comes when a host knows they've struck a nerve. He posed a question about Hegseth's involvement in a high-profile controversy, one that had raised eyebrows across the political spectrum. The question was carefully worded, laced with just enough humor to keep the audience engaged but pointed enough to demand a serious response. Hegseth, however, was not in the mood for nuance. His response was a torrent of indignation, his voice booming as he accused Colbert of perpetuating a smear campaign orchestrated by political opponents. He gestured animatedly, his hand slicing through the air, as he railed against what he called the mainstream media's obsession with tearing down conservative voices. The audience, caught between amusement and unease, responded with a mix of applause and murmurs, unsure whether to align with Colbert's probing or Hegseth's defiance. Colbert, unfazed, leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk playing on his lips as he let Hegseth's words hang in the air, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He then countered with a follow-up question, this time referencing a specific incident that had been widely reported, one that Hegseth had previously downplayed. The question was a masterstroke, delivered with the precision of a seasoned interviewer who knows how to keep the pressure on without breaking the rhythm of the show. Hegseth's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening, as he realized he was being backed into a corner. He attempted to pivot, redirecting the conversation to his military service and his commitment to national security, but Colbert was relentless, steering the discussion back to the issue at hand. The exchange grew more contentious, with Hegseth's voice rising to a near shout, his words dripping with frustration as he accused Colbert of twisting the truth. The audience, now fully engrossed, leaned forward in their seats, their reactions a mix of gasps and nervous laughter. The studio lights seemed to burn brighter, the cameras capturing every flicker of emotion on Hegseth's face as he struggled to maintain control. Colbert, sensing the moment, pressed harder, asking Hegseth to address a contradiction in his public statements, his tone polite but unyielding. Hegseth's response was explosive, a fiery rebuttal that veered into personal attacks, accusing Colbert of being a mouthpiece for liberal elites. The accusation landed like a grenade, and the audience erupted, some cheering, others booing, as the interview teetered on the edge of chaos. Colbert, ever the professional, maintained his composure, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise at the intensity of Hegseth's outburst. The host attempted to steer the conversation back to safer ground, tossing in a light-hearted quip to diffuse the tension, but Hegseth was having none of it. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense, and declared that he wouldn't sit there and be lectured by someone who didn't understand the realities of his world. The audience gasped, the studio falling into a momentary hush as the weight of his words sank in. It was a pivotal moment, one that shifted the dynamic of the interview and set the stage for what would become a viral sensation. Hegseth's frustration was palpable, his body language signaling that he was reaching a breaking point. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the sweat on his brow, the clench of his jaw, as he prepared to make a move that would shock everyone in the room. The tipping point came swiftly, a moment that would be replayed and analyzed across every corner of the internet. Stephen Colbert, undeterred by Pete Hegseth's escalating anger, posed one final question, a carefully crafted inquiry that cut to the heart of the controversy surrounding Hegseth's public persona. It was a question about integrity, about accountability, delivered with the kind of moral clarity that Colbert was known for, yet trapped in his signature comedic veneer. The audience leaned in, sensing that this was the moment the entire interview had been building toward. Hegseth's face contorted, a mix of fury and disbelief, as he realized he had no easy way out. For a brief moment, he seemed to consider his response, his eyes darting from Colbert to the audience, as if weighing his options. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, he pushed back his chair, the screech of metal against the stage floor cutting through the silence. "I'm done with this," he declared, his voice thick with emotion, as he ripped off his microphone and tossed it onto the desk. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath that echoed through the studio, as Hegseth stood, his posture rigid, and stormed off the set. The cameras followed him, capturing the moment as he disappeared behind the curtains, leaving Colbert momentarily speechless. The host recovered quickly, his years of experience kicking in as he turned to the audience with a wry smile, delivering a quip that elicited nervous laughter. "Well, folks, that's one way to end an interview," he said, his voice light but his eyes betraying the shock of what had just transpired. The audience erupted in a mix of cheers and boos, some applauding Colbert's tenacity, others stunned by Hegseth's dramatic exit. Backstage, the crew scrambled to make sense of the chaos, while producers huddled, already anticipating the headlines and social media firestorm that would follow. Colbert, ever the professional, transitioned to a commercial break, but not before tossing out another joke to keep the energy high. As the show cut to ads, the studio buzzed with excitement, the audience whispering among themselves, already pulling out their phones to share the moment with the world. The internet exploded almost immediately, with clips of Hegseth's walk-off going viral, trending under hashtags like #HegsethWalkOff and #ColbertClash. Pundits and commentators began dissecting the exchange, some praising Colbert for holding Hegseth accountable, others accusing him of pushing too hard. Social media platforms lit up with memes, reaction videos, and heated debates, as the moment became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of the deep divisions in the political landscape. For Hegseth, the walk-off was both a moment of defiance and a public relations nightmare, as his critics seized on the incident to question his temperament and suitability for leadership. For Colbert, it was a triumph of sorts, a testament to his ability to navigate high-stakes interviews without losing his cool. The fallout would dominate news cycles for days, with talk shows, podcasts, and op-eds weighing in on what it all meant for the state of discourse in America. In the days that followed, the fallout from Pete Hegseth's dramatic exit from The Late Show became a cultural phenomenon, sparking endless analysis and debate. News outlets across the spectrum ran with the story, with headlines ranging from Hegseth's meltdown, walks off Colbert's show to Colbert's ambush. Did he go too far? Pundits on cable news dissected every moment of the exchange, with some arguing that Hegseth's walk-off was a justified response to biased questioning, while others saw it as a sign of his inability to handle scrutiny. Social media platforms were ablaze with reactions, from gifs of Hegseth storming off to edited clips juxtaposing the moment with dramatic movie scenes. Late-night hosts, never ones to miss an opportunity, piled on with their own takes, with some poking fun at Hegseth's theatrics and others using the incident to comment on the broader state of political discourse. Colbert himself addressed the moment in his next monologue, striking a balance between humor and reflection, acknowledging the intensity of the exchange while defending his role as a journalist and entertainer. "We ask tough questions because that's what you deserve," he told his audience, earning a standing ovation. For Hegseth, the aftermath was more complicated. His supporters rallied around him, framing the walk-off as a bold stand against a hostile media, while his critics pointed to it as evidence of his volatility. He took to social media to defend himself, posting a lengthy statement that doubled down on his accusations of bias and claimed he had no regrets about leaving the set. Yet, the incident cast a shadow over his public image, with some questioning whether it would impact his political aspirations or media career. Analysts speculated about the long-term consequences, noting that the viral moment could either galvanize his base or alienate moderates who valued composure under pressure. Meanwhile, the incident sparked broader conversations about the role of late-night television in politics, with some arguing that shows like Colbert's had become battlegrounds for ideological warfare, while others saw them as essential platforms for holding public figures accountable. The clash also highlighted the challenges of navigating a polarized media landscape, where every word, gesture, and decision could be weaponized. For the audience, both in the studio and at home, the moment was a stark reminder of the raw, unfiltered nature of live television, where anything could happen, and often did. As the dust settled, the Hegseth-Colbert clash remained a talking point, a case study in the collision of personalities, politics, and performance. It was a moment that captured the zeitgeist, reflecting the tensions of a divided nation, and it ensured that both Hegseth and Colbert would remain at the center of the cultural conversation for weeks to come. The video clips continued to circulate, the memes kept coming, and the debate raged on, proving that in the age of viral media, a single moment could resonate far beyond the confines of a late-night stage.